you go through an experience like that where you feel so insignificant because of the sheer size and mass and epicness of the world that you're in, how does that make you feel?
For a moment you go, wow, I'm nothing. What is the point?
It doesn't matter what I do, really.
Yeah, exactly. What is the point? I don't matter.
And maybe that's kind of freeing, liberating in some way.
It is.
Because you're like, all the pressures, all the kind of modern life pressures that you might have, just go, they fade away because they don't really matter.
Absolutely. And then you think, well, if there's no point to all this, then what better point could there be to really enjoy it and just be good to everybody?
Paris, welcome.
Thank you for bringing me on your podcast.
Who is Paris?
Well, he's a guy from 15 minutes down the road from where you're from.
So we just found out, for 15 years, we probably grew up 5 minutes apart.
Yeah,
so,
literally.
How weird is that?
Yeah, so I guess I'm from not too different background to where you're from.
Something in the water in Somerset just encourages people to take adventures, I guess, doesn't it?
I guess so, yeah. Well, it's funny because being in a place like Dubai where everybody's from all different nationalities, people sort of say, oh, you're the adventure guy but back home I'd be probably quite normal in some senses because people like to do things that I like to do.
Right.
So
maybe not everything you like to do.
Not everything. Maybe not to the levels, but
not to the extreme.
But you definitely find a lot of adventurous people, a lot of people who like that kind of lifestyle, and so it's a lot more normal. I think it's a weird thing actually. Like when I've told people about my next big expedition, and you're talking with people from other countries, especially when I was trying to explain to people here about that we're going to row across the Pacific.
Yeah.
And I was talking with especially the locals and the Arab population. They said, oh, no.
Yeah.
That's a very long way.
Yeah. Why would you do that?
Yeah, you shouldn't do that. And I was like, no, that's the challenge. Like, no, you
too long.
Yeah, you really should rethink this. But then, as you know, these kind of things are kind of what people find to be fun and mad and
probably just encourages you more.
Yeah.
Right? Hearing that this is a bad idea. Sounds like a better idea now.
Yeah. But there was somebody who literally tried to talk us out of it. Said, your life is more important than this silly idea.
That's a really good question, because I've been in lots of situations where people have thought the things they were doing were more important than their life. And you look at the extreme sports communities I've been in, and they were taking so many big risks, but for them it was a case of if they weren't doing that, they wouldn't necessarily feel like they're living their life to their full potential. Do you understand that? Maybe you can relate to that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the whole reason I do everything is just so that I feel satisfied that I'm, touching the corners of the earth and experiencing things that, are available to me. And I'm not going to be here forever, so try and enjoy it and experience the things you want to experience. As kids, I think many of us would love that feeling of learning how to fly. You know what I mean? That was like we thought only birds could do that. And these days, there are ways that we can have that feeling. I paramotor, you skydive, right? And that gives you that feeling of feeling like a bird, and that's available to anyone these days. But whether you actually go, you know what, I'm going to make sure that I have that experience, that's, I think, rooted in whether you are really trying to make the most out of life. I think that's how I look at it anyway.
What have been the top 3 experiences of your life? Without getting into detail, just brushing over the main point of them all, what would be the top 3 you've had?
Experiences, adventures, or...
See, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
As you wish, whatever you would say. I don't want to influence the answer.
I mentioned the row across the Pacific. That was one of the best times of my life. That finished in the summer this year. Was, mind-changing, life-changing. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. I went on an adventure. I've become an avid scuba diver, and I particularly like discovering shipwrecks. And I discovered a shipwreck I mean, I wasn't the first to discover it, but, you know, we went and found it. It's a little bit unknown about, which was actually the biggest naval catastrophe since the Titanic when it happened in 1961.
Wow.
Just off of Dubai. You'll never hear anyone here talk about it. You won't hear many people know about it.
How deep is it?
Only 20 meters, 25, wow. Yeah. So it's now off of Amal Quain because it was towed and then it sank. 238 people died. And when we went and discovered it, it was amazing because you're looking at a boat that was built in the 40s, 1940s, and, you know, sank in 1961. And when we got to the top, we were like, we all looked at each other like, yeah, we saw something special there. Like that was cool. That was a piece of history.
Yeah, I bet.
And then one of the guys said, I wonder if there's anybody who's still alive today who was on the boat. And that just stuck in my mind. So as soon as I got home, I then did as much research as I can. And luckily, with the internet today, if you want to find anyone, you'll find them. So I found a guy, 81 years old, was 17 years old on the boat. He was working on the boat. And he spent his whole life in the naval world. And that was his first ever job. And it just made me think, you know, he was 17 years old, flew to Mumbai to start work on a boat. I don't know many 17-year-olds who do things like that these days, you know. Anyway, his very first trip ended in disaster, ended in him fighting for his life. And I managed to have a phone call with him, and then I said, this story's incredible. And he said, you know, I've never told this story because when you are lucky enough to survive something that so many people were not lucky enough to survive, it's considered a shame to talk about it. So he didn't talk about it, and there's a lot of trauma in there which came out.
Survivor's guilt, no doubt. Probably survivor's guilt.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Why me? Why did I get lucky?
Yeah. And so anyway, he told us this story. We put it in the documentary. It was him narrating the whole story, which was fantastic.
Wow.
When I put it out there, one of my mates from school got in touch, and he said, you know, my uncle was on that boat.
From school?
And I was like...
Unbelievable.
And then I just linked the surnames. I was like, how did I not make that link? And I was like, you should watch this video. And then he said, Paris, this is amazing. So it was his uncle that I interviewed. And he said, this is amazing. You know, we all know about this incident that happened to him, but he's never told us about it. And we never heard the story. Would you mind if I show this to our family? I said, absolutely. And so he showed it, and they were massively thankful. And then when I was doing the training to row the Pacific, I was like, you know, I should get in touch with him because he, after this, had sailed around the world solo, as you do, you know, and he found himself in Tahiti, and this is when he wrote his book, and that's when he started to realize he had a lot of trauma from this thing. So as I was, you know, thinking, yeah, I'll get in touch with him this week, then my friend got in touch with me and said, unfortunately, he died that day, and that his family wanted to say thank you for telling his story before he died. So that was an interesting adventure. It was just another one of our episodes of Guy in Dubai, my TV show, but was an interesting one.
Did he manage to see the work you had done before he died then, or?
He saw the episode, yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
And within how long until he passed away?
Oh, it was about a year later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
what an amazing way for you to impact his life in those last years, right?
Yeah.
Especially something so traumatic. It kind of concludes his life in quite a impactful way, really, right?
Yeah.
Looking back and reflecting on through the work you've done.
It was nice because I think for many years he probably had that negative feeling of the whole thing, and then as time goes on, this starts to become a story. Hang on a minute, what happened here? This was the world before the UAE was the UAE, before it became a union. So it was actually, you know, the Trucial States of Oman. It was a British protectorate, so there was a lot of British influence in terms of, you know, the relationships with the rulers here. And when we were doing our investigations, because my editor went into real detail, pulled up all sorts of naval reports and,
wow,
you know, to find out what really happened. And we found all sorts of interesting stuff. Yeah, and we learned a little bit about what the UAE was before it was the UAE,
yeah,
you know, 10 years before. And he ends it on a really nice note. And this is how he ended the video. He said, you know, I was invited back to Dubai once, you know, the place has changed a lot. You know, when I was there, it was just a gold souk and some docking areas, and it's a charming place. And now it's become the place it has. And then we end it with this picture of, you know,
Really?
of Dubai with the Burj Khalifa in the city, and be like, you know, this is what it became. And the story of the UAE since then has been incredible. So that's number 2.
Yeah.
Number 3, I don't know. I don't know if I can really pull one out among the others. I mean, I've been on a number of...
What comes to mind first? There's something you're thinking about, I know. Something in your head.
There's 2 things in my head. One was I climbed Mauna Kea, which is it's the tallest mountain in the world.
Okay.
But it's not the highest mountain in the world because it starts underwater. It's in Hawaii.
Okay.
And me and my friend climbed it. So it's only 4,300 meters high, and all of the world's biggest telescopes are on the top because it's in the Pacific Ocean, so there's no light pollution. Thin air because it's high up in the on the top of a mountain, and so they get the best view of the galaxy from up there. So me and my friend climbed that, which was an interesting time. Also, I've done a lot of paramotoring, lots of amazing little discoveries from the air.
Yeah.
You know, lots of smaller adventures which have all been amazing. In today's world, like even 10 years ago, it wasn't possible to do what you can do today in terms of, if you want to go, let's say you want to run your business, which is here, but you want to go to another country to live, you don't need to buy a house because you can rent Airbnb, you can do short-term things. You don't need a car because you've got not only simple apps like Uber, but you can do car sharing and things like e-car and stuff like that. You can rent for the day, rent for the month. Like pretty much everything is now available for you to be able to move. So when I was in Hawaii, I was among a heap of people who had just captured that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And they just were like, I'm going to live in Hawaii.
Kind of nomads and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, they've got a business somewhere else. And, you know, sometimes they travel or whatever, but they could effectively be anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's possible today.
Yeah.
And I think is that if people aren't harnessing that, then they're missing out on it a little bit.
I often think, when I look back, I grew up in the golden age of backpacking, right? Where, I mean, this was 2010, around then. I guess kind of 5 years either side. Social media wasn't really a thing, right? Facebook, people were on it, but they weren't really on it like they are today, right? There wasn't really Instagram and TikTok and all this sort of stuff that people are so obsessed with. And so I remember that my adventures, you know, sleeping rough on trains in India to cross the whole of India, and buying a motorbike in Vietnam and crossing the whole country and all this sort of stuff for a year. And I remember not having any access to internet unless I was paying $1 an hour for an internet cafe and all this sort of stuff. And so when I look back, no one could get hold of me at the age of 19 years old when I was doing all this. No one could get hold of me. I was just out in the world having these adventures. And I think that's now changed, and everything's so documented. On one hand, people are probably more safe because you know where they are, right? Nowadays, you know exactly where your kids are if they're traveling around the world. And as a dad now, I'm quite happy that, you know, my son or daughter, if they're going traveling, I'd know roughly where they are. But it kind of loses a little bit of the adventure, doesn't it? To kind of escape and just find the world, and in doing so, learn more about yourself. And maybe there's an element there of we're not able to become as resilient because we're not forced to be resourceful as much as we were before. Would you agree with that?
100%. You know, these days, why are we traveling? We're traveling to get the picture that we can put out. And I've seen people, I mean, I'm not like this, but I've seen people who literally go somewhere, get the photo, now they're to the next place.
Yeah.
Didn't enjoy anything.
They're not there.
Yeah, they're not there. They're not present. I mean, where you see this the most is concerts. Concerts are not the same vibe as they used to be.
I had a friend at a concert the other day, and he looked around, and every single person was just watching it through their phones.
Yeah.
Like, no one's actually there.
Yeah.
And they're never going to watch that video,
Yeah.
ever. They might post it on a story, but they'll
Yeah.
never look at it again.
Yeah. I remember I went to watch Guns N' Roses in 2005, I think. They had a kind of a thing where the bands changed, what have you, and it was Axl Rose and his other band. and me and my friend went, and we just got stuck in moshing, and you know, like you had to watch yourself. Like someone was going to get injured, right? But you big mosh pit, everyone getting into the songs, and then I watched them here in Abu Dhabi after the Formula One, and everyone was just stood there, and I was bored, and it was just me and one other guy who knew the words of the songs. And
Wow.
I don't know, it was just there wasn't the vibe, you know. But I hear, you know, I remember listening to Noel Gallagher saying, no, we lived in the last era of rock music, and, and now it's just people on their phones.
But I think that's true, and not just with music, but with adventure and life and travel and everything. The way we experience life as humans has fundamentally changed, right? And I think this is why I say I grew up in the golden era of backpacking, because I was on the cusp of it.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years later, we were getting into that living through our phones thing, and I look back at, you know, stories of my family who used to travel, and they couldn't really travel across India and Southeast Asia because it wasn't accessible.
Yeah.
So for me, flights were cheap. It was really cheap. I mean, I used to take £5 flights around Europe with Ryanair, right? They used to just pay the tax and that was it. You know, getting to Asia was £200 return from the UK. But 40 years earlier, or 20 years or 30 years earlier, you just couldn't do that. And so a lot of people in the UK, they would, if they were really wanting to experience backpacking, they would do Eurail, that sort of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, I hear some of the stories back then, and it was you couldn't contact each other unless it was via a phone, which most people didn't have in terms of staying in one place. So you would meet under the Eiffel Tower at 12 o'clock, and hopefully go there every day, and then you'd meet your friend there, and it would just be impossible to try and meet up. Yeah. And you know, you kind of think, well, that's impractical. Obviously, it's difficult to meet people, but on the plus side, there's that element of adventure, and I think we've lost that. Sadly.
Absolutely. I mean, well, you know, we lost something and we've gained something else,
totally.
right? So you know, I was backpacking maybe 5 years before you were, and yeah, we didn't have social media. But now I think, God, if I was able to do that today, and how much fun I'd have creating some videos and telling stories, like that would be cool.
But you'd also make a career out of it.
Yeah.
So back in the day, you couldn't then create this lifestyle which then funds you continuing to do that.
We dreamed of it.
Right.
Yeah.
It was impossible.
Yeah. Now it's really easy.
Maybe if you're lucky, you'd be able to write articles in a magazine or something, right? But yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like if you can do that, you can tell your story. And you know, I'm trying to teach my nephew who's 15, you know, all about storytelling with videos, and he's really into it. And you know, so because these days his skill sets in terms of preparing him for the future are probably better focused off in terms of how can I tell a really good story than it is about knowing engineering or something else, right? So if he can use storytelling to help brands to tell their story in a way that people actually want to listen to rather than like an advert, then he can actually make a lot of money. Yeah. And he could probably do quite well and probably have a lot of fun. So yes, I do agree with you. We have lost a bit of the authentic, you know, don't know what's going to happen. Let's just do this for you know, see where this takes us kind of vibe to a very kind of organized, show-offy kind of vibe. Maybe the show-offy is the wrong word. It's more just, you know, we're
social proof. A lot of people are doing it for social proof.
There we go. Yeah.
But I wonder if I think that if you look at social rejection as one of the biggest fears that human beings experience, right? I feel like a lot of people, they live with so much anxiety nowadays because they have this kind of constant fear of not being relevant. Do you know what I mean by that? Like they have to document their lives in order to try and feel relevant in a lot of ways. And so when they don't do that, you know, anyone can be famous now, but in doing so, no one's really famous, and you don't really get the appreciation that they feel they deserve in a lot of ways.
Well, there's three things that people care most about. One is, you know, how I can stay healthy and keep my age. One is how I can make money, and one is how I can be important. Yeah. Right. So if you can figure out any kind of business around one of those three things, you'll make yourself a lot of money. But where social media really comes into it is being able to make people give them some importance, effectively. People who want it. You know, and we all have a different hunger for feeling important. Yeah. And I guess those people who really strive for success on social media are those people who really need the importance for whatever reason that is.
based on what we just said, if you could go back to any era and live in any era, when would it be, and where would you live?
Any era in my lifetime?
No, any at all.
Oh, any era.
Yeah.
Probably, well, 1960s.
Okay.
I think that was an interesting time. 1960s in London.
Really?
Maybe it's just because that's what my mother and father did. So maybe I've heard.
So
those
you grew up, with stories of how amazing that was. 1960s London, the freedom and.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was expecting something, like Timbuktu or in the middle of nowhere. And
no, I think it would be fun to be in London in those times. It was a place of social change. People were, going from a very kind of restricted or conservative world to changing to a very liberal world in one decade. You had the Beatles out there and lots of things happening, lots of things going on in the world. They put the first men on the moon in the 60s. And so, the life that my mum and dad lived was quite amazing. Yeah. It was so funny, actually. Just the other day, I just bumped into somebody and I said, "Oh, how's it going?" It's like, "Yeah, no complaints. I mean, at least, we're not living, the 9 to 5 like our parents did." I went, "Oh, yeah." And then I paused and went, "Well, actually, my mother lived a pretty awesome life." And she's like, "Yeah, actually, my parents lived pretty awesome lives, actually." I don't know why we said that, because actually the way we're living now is far more regimented than...
Things have become more, I don't know, consistent and...
Predictable,
right?
Yeah. So,
maybe that actually is a great answer for you, because... I feel like you've sought out unpredictability in your life.
Yeah. Oh,
but
totally.
you've made it into your profession. You've got a career in unpredictability.
Yeah.
And so looking back at the 1960s in London, an unpredictable lifestyle with lots of freedom is actually very close to your values.
Yeah, so it's interesting because living in Dubai, it's a very regimented place. It's become more and more so since I came here till now. And
when did you come here?
2008.
Okay.
And there was a little bit of wildness back then. But slowly they've regulated everything. So now there's nothing that can happen unless it's organized.
Yeah.
You can do anything as long as you've got the permission and you've done all the procedures and you do it in the right way. But that takes a lot of the vibe out of things. You go to somewhere, I've never been to South America, but I get this feeling that South America is just a place that just happens because of the vibe. Even London does to some degree, in the sense that, things can just happen naturally.
Yeah.
People just in the streets playing music because it's the time to do that and everyone wants to join in. And if the vibe is there, then everyone goes with it.
Spontaneity, yeah.
Yeah. And we
That's a cultural thing, I'm guessing, in a lot of ways, isn't it?
I guess so.
I totally get it when you're saying in South America. I remember being on a beach in Rio. I just went there for 10 days over New Year's Eve on my own because I had nothing to do. I didn't have a family back then. I just went to Rio. And I remember just sitting on the beach with a cocktail. And then I think within 2 hours, it must have been the end of work day or something, within 2 hours, the entire beach was full, and it was the biggest party I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it just came out of nowhere. Some guy with some drums or something, and then everyone started coming around, and then bang, massive party.
Exactly. If a party happens here, that's good. It was planned and promoted for months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So things are predictable here. Now, maybe... because I live here, I seek out that unpredictability and that uncertainty because I can thrive off that a little bit. And I guess we're all somewhere on the scale of prefer a bit more surety and certainty and prefer a bit more uncertainty. And maybe I'm a little bit more towards that side.
I feel like our values kind of shift now and again, though. Dr. DeMartini does a lot of work around values, and he says that essentially whatever you feel you're lacking becomes your value because that's what you're out to seek, right? Subconsciously, you put that on a higher, ranking, and so you're looking for that. So if you're living in a place where you feel like there's more restriction in terms of rules, regulations, that sort of stuff, going out and seeking adventure and freedom and unpredictability is probably quite high on your values, maybe even more so.
Yeah.
Whereas if you lived in South America, you might want a bit more consistency and stability. Some other things that you do, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
When you look at why you do what you do, I'm just trying to think from growing up, right? At what point did you say, do you know what? I'm just going to go on adventures for the rest of my life and turn this into a career. When did that switch flick? Was there a moment in time, or was it just gradual?
No, absolutely a moment in time. I remember exactly where I was sitting and what I was thinking. A few realizations were going on at the same time. I was in a period where I had a girlfriend who had a mother who had a terminal illness, and she had ALS, which is a horrible way to go. And I sort of watched her deteriorate, and it was a sad thing because she had lived a life as a housewife, and therefore wasn't, let's say, fair to say, I think, that she wasn't somebody who had gone and, captured every opportunity of life. She lived a very sort of limited life in that sense. But a family woman and, that type of person. And then she realizes that the end is now coming. And I remember in the morning, because ALS, you start losing the feeling of your hands. You'd clutter the pots, everything in the kitchen, wake us up at like 6 in the morning, and then we see her walk outside, and she'd pray, and I could just see her heels under the curtain. And she'd pray for 5 minutes, and then the next day it turned to 10 minutes, and then the next day it was 20, and then until she was out there for an hour. Even though she didn't really express, or she couldn't really speak that well, but she didn't really express that she was scared, or that, or that she was worried about what's going on. We could see she was. And that whole experience definitely gave me the kick up the bum that, right, you don't know where the finish line is of this life. It could be soon, it could be a long way away, but whatever. You've got a limited time. Go in and make sure that all those dreams that I had, I go and do them now. Because I always had this thing of, when I've set up a business and I've sold it and I've made loads of money, then I'll go and do all the things I want to do. But then I was also in a situation where I had set up a business and it had failed, and then I set up another business thinking that this one would be the success. Invested all my time, weekends, Christmas Day, everything. And then it failed again. And so I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to keep doing that for the rest of my life. Maybe I'm going to keep failing. Not guaranteed that one of them is going to hit it big. Or maybe I do, but not till much, much later. And maybe I'll be too old to do some of the things that I want to do. So I was like, I've got to figure out what is the life that I want to live. And I need to make a business that allows me to do those things. So I thought, okay, well, what is it that I actually want to do? Like, you have to reassess things and think again, because we start to get conditioned when we grow up. When we're 8 years old, we want to be astronauts and singers and, all these things. And then when you get to, like, the time we're going to university, and you start to realize, well, let's be realistic about this. Maybe I could be an accountant, or maybe I could get a job in HR, right? So let's study hard and be a bit more sure about me having a job at the end of this. And then you start to get conditioned that actually what you're passionate about is human resources. But you're not really passionate about it. You've just conditioned yourself because you can make a job out of that. That wasn't your dream as an 8-year-old. So I thought, well, what were my dreams as an 8-year-old? What was the vision back then? I thought, well, I always wanted to climb Mount Everest. I saw this guy. He was like 45 years old, and he got in a boat and he rowed across the Pacific Ocean. And I thought it was mad. I thought I would never do that. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to go to the best parties. I want to go to Mardi Gras. I want to see everything that the planet has, and everything that is outside the planet that I may be able to do. So I thought, well, nice dream, Paris, but how are you going to make money out of that?
Yeah.
I thought, well, what if I create a TV show about a guy with a big idea to go do this stuff, and I'm the center of it, and I go and sort of show people how it's done, but also hopefully inspire them that they can get out there this weekend and give it a go themselves, and there can be an element of information, an element of entertainment, because it would be fun to watch, but hopefully an element of inspiration as well. And I thought, great. And then I was like, shit, I've got to go for a coffee now. And I went to see a friend for a coffee. I was like, I've got this idea. What do you think? And he goes, I like it. You know what we should call it? Guy in Dubai. And I was like, Guy in Dubai. And I went back, registered the domain name.
Yeah.
I didn't get around to doing it for a couple of years later. I was planning it, and, it was a great idea, but, before it could actually become anything, pieces had to be put together. And then...
How old were you at this point?
This was 2014, so I was about 30, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So about 29, 30. So I think it was 29, 30 when I came up with the idea, but it was a couple of years before I really went in and did it. I think it was about 32. And then I remember I was like, right, let's do this now. Went to register the domain name. I'm like, oh, someone's got it. And then I get an email saying someone wants to buy it off you. I'm like, oh, wait, I own it. Good, I'm glad I got that right. I captured the domain name. So yeah, and you know, it was difficult setting it up. I had no money to set it up with at the time. Just ideas. I was telling everybody how big it's going to be, and you know, just persisted with it because I knew this was my passion, that I just got to keep going. And now, thankfully, we're in a position where we're a small but functioning business, where we're making money, and we can make more money by just doing the same thing but more of it. So I've done the hard yards of it now, and I'm glad we're now sort of over that hill.
It's amazing how you've managed to combine something you're passionate about with a way to sustain it and make money and provide value to other people, right?
Yeah, well, actually, it was things I didn't do that I wanted to do. You know, I was like, I want to be a skydiver, but I'm not one. So it wasn't like I was already. I was like, how can I become those things? How can I want to be a scuba diver, but I'm not one. So initially, a lot of my episodes were showing people how you can learn to be a skydiver. And I went and did my AFF with, you know, and showed the whole process. Here in Abu Dhabi, yeah. And now I'm a skydiver, and I build that into my other episodes, you know, have some fun shots in there, and, you know, all sorts of other adventures that I do. So
every time you add a little skill on, you can then use that to build, you know, more interesting content, right?
Exactly. And now I sort of am the vision that I had before, when I had this idea of this guy that goes around doing all these cool things, big adventures, invited to all the cool places, and now I am that guy. So it's cool. So I have to sort of pinch myself every now and then and go, here I am. I'm in it, right. You know.
I suppose when you imagine being that guy, you think of all the good stuff. You think of how amazing it would be to have this adventure, or to go on this, or to be invited to all the cool places, or to live an exciting life. I suppose you don't picture the really low moments where you think, God, have I taken this too far now? Have you experienced a moment like that?
Many.
Tell me, give me one of the lowest moments where you thought, I've gone too far now.
With
what are your adventures?
With my current business, with my shows and my adventures.
In terms of any of your adventures that you've been on, yeah.
Well, I was looking at a cargo ship bigger than the Titanic, directly pointed at our little boat in the middle of the Pacific, thinking, we're going to die in about 30 seconds. I was like, this was really silly.
I need some context on this. So tell me about the Pacific. How far is it to go from one side to the other side?
Well, the Pacific, it's the biggest ocean in the world. It's bigger than all the land mass on the planet. There's many different ways you can go, right? So the longest routes are, you know, huge. We didn't do the longest route. We went from Monterey, California to the island of Kauai, which is, I mean, you could argue that's half the Pacific, right? So it's the northern part of it. It was 4,800 kilometers. Took us 39 days to row.
39 days of rowing.
Rowing 24 hours a day between our team of 4. So two people rowing for 2 hours, 2 people resting, and you keep switching that up constantly until you get there.
So within your boat, you've got everything you need for 39 days. There's no support coming in, or do they?
No support. Yeah.
There's no one there to help you. You're on your own.
Totally on our own. Yeah, no support. You've got all your food. You're trained to be able to handle everything, or you should be. So if there's a medical issue, we were all trained in first aid, so how to deal with that. If there's a rescue situation, we're all trained in sea survival and rescue. We're trained in navigation, radio communication. We had satellite phones. We had emergency beacons. So we're set up, but you're never fully prepared.
No, and I mean, you've got to get on with everyone on that team pretty well to spend 39 days.
Yeah, so
at sea, right?
Well, that's probably the biggest sort of learning experience from the whole thing. Is we were 4 friends from way back. We had 2 brothers. One of them was at school with me. The other one was at school with him. So we all went back a long way. And we had this boarding school banter among us, but it was a little bit competitive. You know, we had to prove each other wrong. Who knew the most? We were like that. But as soon as we lost sight of shore, that ego evaporated.
I bet that's humbling, right?
Yeah.
And no one's bigger than nature.
No, and it was like, I need these guys, and I'm going to do everything to support them because I need them, right? And it became not about me, became looking after these guys. What can I do? Ollie's going to finish on the oars in 10 minutes. I'll boil the water so he can make some food, and that will save him 5 minutes so he can sleep 5 minutes more. I know that Barney's fixing something up there. I'm going to, charge this so that, So we had to constantly be thinking about supporting each other. There was no breaks, right? In your break time, in your 2-hour break time, that was active time, right? You had to sleep, right? So we could only sleep for about an hour and a half maximum at a time, but you had to fix things on the boat. You had to communicate. If we needed to speak with weather routers to understand, we're in two storms in this journey. We need to know what's going on. So there was no rest time. I do remember, like 5 minutes, I brought the ukulele out and just went, and but that was about the only time I remember of us just chilling. So it was constant, and being able to get along with the guys was more important than being right. It was more important than proving who knew the most. It was more important than everything. It was about keeping the boat happy. We had a motto: a happy boat is a fast boat.
Yeah, right.
So if we were all motivated, if we were all happy and smiling and laughing, this boat's going to move. If it's like nagging at each other and getting annoyed with each other, the motivation's not going to be there. So happiness was the key thing. So sometimes I didn't agree with the decisions that other guys made. That was all right. I dealt with that, and I said, look, I fully support you. We'll go with your decision. Like, if it was wrong, I'm not going to nag at them.
Was there any point where one person was injured or couldn't continue, and then the other one had to take the slack? And
yeah, we did that. Yeah, so Ollie had some issues, and there was a bit of a scary moment. He was injured and out for a day, so I remember that because Harry took his shift on. I remember, again, in the mindset I was in, well, I'm tired, I want to sleep. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to give up my rest session so Ollie can have it. And I went and sat on deck. Instead of having my hour and a half sleep, which I really needed, I was chatting with Harry. Keep him some company, give Ollie some time to rest, and I'll make the sleep up some other time. I did want to sleep, but meanwhile I'm getting splashed in the face by cold water everywhere. It was horrible. The first 10 days were horrific. We were in a storm for the whole time, 40-foot waves, like 15 meters if you work in metrics, and
15-meter waves.
Yeah.
How tall's the boat?
Well, the boat's about 8 meters long. I mean, it's only like that high off the ground, off the sea. So, but they weren't sort of crashing into.
But you're going right up and then right down.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, what's that feeling like when you're coming straight down off a 40-foot wave?
Epic. Epic. So the first storm we were in was horrendous because the waves were coming at us from the side.
Yeah.
Right, and every wave that hits you, you're thinking, is this going to capsize the boat? Most of them just kind of, you sort of go up and then you slowly come down like this, but sometimes they kind of break on you, and if you get that wrong, you can. So
the skill is then to turn into them so they don't break on you, right?
Well, you don't really know which ones are going to break. You don't want to be completely side on to them, so you would turn at a slight angle so that they're hopefully coming a little bit behind you. It's like more at an angle.
I suppose there's a way in which it can actually help you propel you forward.
Yes.
With some of them, and those are the ones you're like, oh, thank God we've got this wave helping us, not.
So in the second storm, the waves were bang on behind us.
Oh, perfect! Yeah.
And we were having so much fun. It was like going down
in the first 10 days.
In the last 5 days.
Oh, perfect.
The first 10 days horrific.
Morale boosted and.
Yeah. The first 10 days horrific. Worst time of my life. It was constantly feeling like you're going to capsize and it was 10-degree water, so you would have caught hypothermia in 30 minutes, you would have died of it in 4 hours. The last 5 days, we got in Storm Calvin. Everybody was petrified for us because it was in the news.
Yeah.
You know? But it just was coming right behind us, and we were surfing those waves. Best time ever.
I bet.
Yeah.
You kind of earned that, though.
Yeah.
I feel like you earned that storm.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The universe was smiling at you and like,
Yeah.
"God, let's give these guys a nice storm and help them in the last 5 days."
Yeah. So our weather router said, look, there's a low pressure over Hawaii. We think it's going to result in a storm. I'll keep you updated.
Yeah.
He gets back to us, says, right, you're going to hit a storm at midnight. Prepare for a storm, right? Because we know what that means.
And you're thinking about, it's just like the first one we had.
Yeah, we were scared of that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, getting prepared means, right, get the life jackets somewhere where we can put them on easily. You know, make sure that we've filled up extra water because we have a water making machine that runs off solar. Mm-hmm. We might not have good solar for the next few days, so let's rinse that as much as we can while we can. So we did all our preparations. Then in the middle of the night, it hit us, and I was asleep. We couldn't see quite what was happening, but the waves are getting bigger and bigger. And the guys who are rowing, they're a little bit worried. So they said, right, because it's hard to see which direction you're going in the pitch black. I can't even really see the compass that well. So, and if you're rowing, and if you just take your eyes off the compass for like 10 seconds, you could have turned the boat sideways, and now you're side onto these big waves. Yeah. So they decided, as a safety measure, they put out something called the drogues, which are like brakes for the boat. It's like 2 windsocks that go under the boat,
right,
to create drag. So they did that, but it ended up getting the rope wrapped around the rudder, and then they lost all steering, and then the very thing they were trying not to do ended up happening, which was coming side onto waves and not being able to steer out of them. So they woke me up, and I'm like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And they're like, "Paris, I need you on deck immediately. We're going to capsize any minute." It's pitch black. So he closes the door, and about 10 seconds later, the boat just goes boosh, almost upside down. And I was like, I've got to get out there now.
Yeah, right.
I don't have time to wake up. I seem to remember I went to sleep in my harness knowing that, you know, I was being prepared. You know, usually I take my harness off to sleep, but I went to sleep in my harness so that as soon as I come out, I clip on. Because if you fall off that boat, that's it. You're gone. Yeah. You're lost forever.
No one's going to find you.
Ever.
Yeah.
There's zero chance. So clipping on, trying to figure out what's going on here, just hearing these waves come at you like a train, and each time you're knowing that it's going to, it was a ticking time bomb until we were going to capsize. And we didn't know how to fix this thing. So Ollie says, I'll jump in the water and get it, unravel it. And we're like, no, don't do that, mate. And then anyway, ended up being that we put out something called the power anchor, which is like a big parachute that goes under the water that aligned us the other way around. So now we're facing the wind and the waves, put us in a stronger position. Then the ropes went loose, so we were able to, I put Harry over the edge by his ankles and he fished them out. But I mean, it sounds like, you know, put him over the edge and you pull them out, but meanwhile, these 40-foot waves are coming, you know what I mean? I'm like, Harry, grab it, you know. And he
just imagine there seems to be so much kit going on around the boat right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot to think about.
Yeah, exactly. And we're trying to make sure that none of us fall off and whatever.
Yeah. One wrong move.
Yeah.
And I mean, you fall off and waves that big.
Yeah. Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah. So we managed to pull it out. We fixed it. I just remember I was on shift when the sun was about to come out. I was like, okay, it's the end of our shift now, but the sun's going to be out in 10 minutes. And I was like, you know what? Let's let them sleep for another hour. They deserve it. They spent a lot of time messing around with things last night. But I really wanted to see what we're in. And when the sun came up, I've never seen so much energy. As far as I could see in every direction, just waves, movement, real energy, huge, huge waves, every direction.
During sunrise?
Yeah.
I bet that was stunning as well, though.
It was stunning. I mean, every day we saw something stunning. It was the most beautiful skies, most beautiful stars. You know, I've never seen, like, it felt like you would open the door to the universe and you could just pick out the stars.
Just an experience of the planet and the world we live in.
Yeah.
That feels almost like another place.
Absolutely.
Another world entirely, right?
Well, you really get the feeling of how insignificant you are when you're being just swished around by these waves and you're just in a tiny boat and you look up at the stars and you can see the galaxy so clear and you realize you're just, almost like a piece of bacteria on a tiny rock flying through the universe at 110,000 kilometers an hour for a nano fraction of time.
When you go through an experience like that, where you feel so insignificant because of the sheer size and mass and epicness of the world that you're in, how does that make you feel? Like, does it make you feel insignificant and what's the point in doing anything, or does it make you think, wow, I need to make the most of this and explore more of it?
For a moment you go, wow, I'm nothing. What is the point of
Doesn't
all
matter
this?
what I do, really.
Yeah, exactly. What is the point? I don't matter.
And maybe that's kind of freeing, liberating in some way.
It is.
Because you're like, all the pressures, all the kind of modern life pressures that you might have, just go, they fade away because they don't really matter.
Absolutely. And then you think, well, if there's no point to all this, then what better point could there be to really enjoy it and just be good to everybody?
There's no point to this, then what better point could there be? I love that.
And the whole rowing experience, being away from people, being away from civilization, no social media, no TV, no one to talk to other than these 3 other people, and really nothing even to look. I mean, we had amazing things to look at, the sea, but it was always always the sea. It gets you thinking. After you spent some time away, you realize you don't miss a lot.
Right.
You think that, what would I do without all these things? And you're like, actually, I'm fine without all of that. I really am. And then you realize that you really miss just a few things. Mainly people, maybe some comforts. I missed, weirdly, something that I never do, that my friends always do, and I always say, no, I'm too busy. Just chilling out with some friends in your pajamas with some nachos, watching something on Netflix with a few pals and doing nothing today.
Couldn't be further from being in a boat, waking up on a boat and trying to survive 40-foot waves with no contact with the outside world, right?
Exactly, yeah, because I realized...
Complete polar opposite.
Exactly.
Eating nachos in your pajamas on the sofa.
Because we never had a moment to rest. There was always being uncomfortable, always working, not a break. And so it was like, when I get a chance to do that, respect it and just remember, how nice that is. And then you miss people more than anything. Yeah. And you start to remember, like, who really is your friend and who, how much, you appreciate and realize that you've only been able to do the things you've been able to do because people have supported you.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people...
So a sense of gratitude.
Huge. Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's the sense of feeling like you've taken things for granted.
Yeah.
Right.
A bit of a guilty feeling, like, I should have been more grateful for that.
Yeah. And I really, really felt that. I remembered, some vivid things in my mind that just made me realize I'd taken things for granted and I'd been an idiot. And I also thought that I deserved everything and that I'd done it all on my own. And I realized, no, I haven't. Like, I've done this because there's
we rarely achieve great things on our own, right?
Yeah, and I realized I'm so supported. It's amazing. I'm so lucky. And then, getting to Hawaii and, the best part of the whole thing was that last day. It was biblical.
After everything you guys have been through.
Yeah, and it was interesting because we had this bet on of how far away we'll be when we see land. And, we got to 90 nautical miles, didn't see it, 60, didn't see it, 40, didn't see it. Sun's going down and we're 30 nautical miles away. And we're like, are we even in the right place?
Everyone's lost the bet at this stage.
Yeah, we're all lost the bet. We're like, how did the Polynesians even find this place in the first place?
Like we're 3,000 miles away.
Yeah, well, we had a chart plotter. We know where we are. We've navigated. Sun goes down. We do see a little glimmer of light in the night. We're like, there's something there, right? And when the sun came up, so when the sun comes up, the sky goes light before the sun comes up. When that sky goes light, we saw like the silhouette of the land. We're like, there it is, Kauai. It's the most beautiful island you'll ever see. They call it the Garden Island. It's where they filmed Jurassic Park. It's just stunning. And there we are, the place we've been dreaming of for the last 2 years. And now we can see it there. And we had gone through patches of rain all the way through, like multiple times a day. But usually you can see where it's raining and you can see where it's not raining. But rain came up and it covered everything as far as we could see in every direction. And when the sun came up, it created this sort of mist off of the water, which when the sun came up in its orange glow, turned the whole mist orange. And it was almost like,
welcome.
Yeah, God saying, here's your island, boys, you know.
Wow.
And we took off our shirts, put our hands in the air, and we're like, we made it, you know. And then a media boat was going to come out and meet us, and I was adamant, you know, let's get some good pictures. I was like, guys, take our time. We're not in a rush. We're here now. We'll see everybody. Let's take our time. But, you know, I remember in particular, Harry, who has 2 daughters and a wife, he was like, let's go. He wanted to see them.
Let's get off this boat.
Yeah, and because you can't see when you're rowing, you're going backwards. And so he was talking to Ollie, who was steering, and saying, what do you see? And he's like, I see a pier and a beach and lots of trees. He's like, okay, what do you see now? I see people on a pier. I think I see a Union Jack flag. It might be Chris. I think there's...
Oh, wow.
And it's like... what do you see now? I see your daughters. And he was just telling him...
Great teamwork, right?
Yeah.
To describe what they can see.
Yeah.
They haven't got that, so to share that was brilliant.
Yeah, it was, I mean, just remembering it makes me emotional. Because it was a big day. I mean, at the time we were happy, and we were just great to see everyone there, like our family. But the realization of everything through that journey, and, you know, my mum was there, and you just come to a point in life where you feel you can really say thank you, you know, because you realize that you took it for granted.
Sounds like an incredible journey that was for you, right? I think when you go on an adventure like that, where there is no certainty and you're pushed, and you're really pushed mentally, physically, everything, it gives you that moment to kind of pause and look introspectively.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what it did for you.
And I was lucky that I was able to take the time to spend 2 months in Hawaii, the most amazing place I've ever been.
Afterwards.
With the most amazing people in Hawaii. They're lovely people. And they welcomed me every day. You know, like I thought this was this amazing welcome when we got there, and they did the Polynesian welcome and, you know, the fish horn, and, you know, that was amazing. But then every day I met amazing people who just really wanted to know, who am I? And what are you all about? And it was amazing, that interconnection, and it was lovely. So I had a lot of time to reflect on things. The other guys, they went back to normal life fairly quickly. So I'm interested.
That's hard, right? Like a reverse culture shock.
Yeah.
Going back home and then being like, wow, I'm straight back into work, or, you know, must be weird for them. Yeah,
so I haven't had a chance to really pick their brains about how it affected them.
I mean, this finished when?
This was...
8 months ago?
We landed on July 20th, and then I got back here in September. And I've only seen Harry since, and I've had a few conversations with Ollie, but Barney I haven't caught up with at all, really. And Barney was my rowing partner. But he went straight back into work and cracked on with it. And I'm glad I had that time to reflect, but I don't know how it affected them going straight back into normal life.
I think it's one of those things, you go through something like that with someone, you just got this bond for life now. You know, 20 years time, 40 years time, you'd be old men, you know, sitting on that sofa having nachos that you dreamed about, and talking about the stories there, and you'd always have that bond, that camaraderie, right?
And you really do know each other after that, because you really see what someone's made of when they're put through that kind of stress.
Yeah,
it's all easy when we're, you know, at a party, being jovial, saying, you know, at work, saying hi, but when you're put under emotional stress, missing your family, physical stress, sleep deprivation, you know, this task of trying to get this thing across the ocean and trying to figure that out, it can bring out the worst in some people.
Yeah. Not everyone's cut out for that either.
Definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, I love to promote adventure, and some things I'll say, like hiking, I'm like, look, almost anyone can get out there and go and have a hike. Not everyone is right for this type of thing.
Certain aptitude that comes with this,
And some people do it and figure out they're not made for it, and it's
too late at that point.
Yeah.
When you look back at what you've done specifically with that trip, would you do it again?
So I'm not going to say 100% no. I'll leave the door a bit open.
Why?
Because my general feeling is, all in all, that was an amazing adventure. I've rode the Pacific. I don't need to do it again. And if I did do it again, I don't know if I'd necessarily have the same positivity. My expectations are so high now because I had such a great experience. It won't always be like that. Why is it a little bit open? Well, could I be tempted by a real hotshot team that already has the kind of sponsorship set up? So, because that was a lot of work.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, and they want to do the Indian Ocean or maybe the Atlantic, something I haven't done before, but maybe slightly different. Maybe I'll leave that open. Generally speaking, I'm looking for completely different adventures. I want to climb mountains.
There's other things you want to take off, yeah.
Yeah, I want to climb some mountains. Me and my friend have been talking about doing a series of marathons around the world, seven continents.
If I'm Paris and I'm sitting down at home and I've come up with the idea of rowing the Pacific, right? What advice would you give me if you could look back and basically give yourself advice, some advice that you wish you heard before you did it? What would you say to yourself?
So there were so many things that we didn't know. We figured that out when we were like half an hour off the coast of California, and we realized we didn't actually know what we were doing, right? Because we hadn't relied on our instruments. So I would have said, you know, okay, so we trained going up and down the shore of Dubai. We never went out.
Right.
Right.
And totally different terrain as soon as you go out.
Yeah, well, and when you're by the shore, you navigate by sight. You can't do that when you're in the deep sea.
Yeah.
So what I would have done is I would have said, get out where you can't see land and really learn how to be reliant on what you've got. That would be the best sort of tactical advice. In terms of my mentality, you know what? I feel I went in with a good mentality. You need a certain type of mentality. I didn't know if I had it or didn't have it. I had a feeling I had it. Now I know I had it. What you have to be able to handle is negativity and, you know, constant bad things happening to you, and you just keep going and keep smiling. Some people can do that, and some people it gets to them. I did a personality assessment about a month afterwards, and one of the criteria was neuroticism, and I got in the 0 percentile, meaning that I basically have very, very little neuroticism, meaning I'm not sensitive to negative things. Yeah. Very useful when you're about to get hit by a cargo ship in the middle of the ocean. Yeah. But in normal life, maybe that's too extreme. But I had certain characteristics which were useful for that type of adventure. So I don't think there's anything that I would go back and say, right, you need to be thinking more like this. Right. I had the right mentality.
That's so key, isn't it? When you when you had the situation with the cargo ship, how far into the trip was that?
Day 9.
Day 9.
Yeah.
So in the first storm.
Yeah.
Near that time.
Yeah, it was then. Yeah, it was the last day of the storm. So it was the tail end of it.
So you're 9 days into a 39-day trip across the Pacific. You're in the last day of a storm. You probably feel relieved that the storm's going to be over soon. Yeah. You look up. There's no one around you. Well, and then in the distance you see this dot appear, right? Yeah.
So actually we didn't know, to be honest, we thought the first 10 days was going to be how it was going to be all the way across.
Right.
I mean, we were hoping for something better, right? But like
a storm the whole way, yeah.
Yeah, but these waves, no one, we didn't know we were in a storm. We just thought this was the ocean. Nobody warned us of that.
It does get better.
So we were hoping it would get better, but the first 10 days we made very little distance. I think we were only about 500 to 800 nautical miles from
Did you then think, okay, this trip's going to take us 3 times as long as we thought?
the tracker told us we were going to make it in 145 days.
Oh my God.
So we were like, all right, guys.
So if you start a trip, do you think how long do you think it was going to take you with the planning? 6 weeks?
We told everybody 40 days.
Okay, so you said 40 days. You did it early then.
Nice
to surprise everyone then.
I was trying to get 30.
Okay, so you did it. You expected 40 days. You head into this 10 days of bad weather, which you think is the norm, and you find out that the tracker says you're going to be 140 days instead.
Yeah. Well, we did know that the currents were difficult for the first band, and then we'll get more into the currents. So we knew we were going to speed up, but we didn't know if this wind and waves was going to be like that all the time.
I can imagine after 10 days, though, being told that the trip's 2 to 3 times longer than you thought would just be heartbreaking, right?
Yeah, it was, yeah. And, well, we were more worried about the fact we only had 55 days worth of food.
And there was no way anyone could drop stuff to you, or?
No, that wouldn't have been allowed. We would have to call for rescue.
Okay.
And that would have, then we'd have to exchange onto a tanker or something
Yeah. Speaking of tankers. So day 9, we had a piece of equipment called an AIS, which gives you a notification when you're on the same path as another boat. When we're training off of the coast of Dubai, that goes off all the time. It's rather annoying because you're always other boats around. When you're in the deep sea, it never goes off. You forget you even have it because, we didn't really see many boats. I think the whole journey we saw 5 to 7 boats for the whole 39 days, right? So that's how derelict it is. So we see this boat in the distance. The alarm goes off. The guys say, Paris, take a look. I see it's 20 miles away. I say, it's miles away, guys, we're fine. They're like, okay, but it's coming this way, so let's keep an eye out. Alarm keeps going off. They're like, Paris, this is getting pretty close. Get the GoPros out. Let's film this because it'd be cool to get a shot as it goes by if it's one of these big cargo ships. And then we realize, wow, it's getting really close. We better radio to it because the issue is they go, they got an engine and they go quite fast. They can actually change direction.
They can change direction
easily.
If it's going to hit us, we can't get out the way. We're too slow, So, and because these things are quite big, you can't tell. Is it going to go there, or is it going to go there, or is it going to,
Yeah.
Right?
It's just this big mass heading towards you, right?
Exactly. So we thought, right, radio to it. We could see that it was going to, it should just miss us, right? Now, in boating terms, use the word starboard and port side as right and left. But now I look back over the footage, realize we gave it the wrong signal. Instead of saying we're on its starboard side, please turn port side, we said we're on your port side, please turn starboard.
Was that because you couldn't see where you were, or because?
Look, it was in a rush. Barney was on the radio, and he'd had the least experience on boats. He was turned the other way as well, so I don't know. And so anyway, this boat that's just, we think is coming dangerously close, but just going to miss us. Now just turns slightly, and now we see what it looks like when it's coming bang at you, and it's just getting bigger and bigger, and the sun was kind of setting right behind it. It was like, all right, this is a beautiful day to die, and it's this silhouette, and then the tone in our voice from let's get a video of this cargo ship turned to like, get the flares, get on the radio, like immediately. Yeah. Now we were all pretty scared about getting hit by the ship. I'd say maybe my level of fear was higher than everybody else's. I think what I was calculating, that it didn't seem that they were, because of our conversations afterwards, was the way I was looking at it is, if this boat hits us, I can probably jump in the water and avoid a collision, but we might get dragged under or whatever, but I can avoid an actual collision. But that's going to smash our boat. Our life raft will be spewed somewhere else. It's quite windy, so if anything was out, like a life raft, it would go off. We didn't have time to get our life jackets on. We maybe should have thought about that, but we didn't think it was going to come that close, So it's 10-degree water, and we're 3 days away from rescue. I was like, you're going to die of hypothermia in that water, and that's what I was thinking. Right. Proper Jack and Rose on the back of a door, right? So that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Anyway, we had less than a minute to fix the situation. We fixed the situation. We got back on, the main thing was we got back on the radar and said, like, you're now coming directly for us. Please turn to your port side, right? So we got back on, and it turned. We see this huge ship just sort of go about 100 meters away from us.
How long did you have to actually deal with that situation?
So about a minute and about 800 meters.
And they managed to turn it just in time.
Yeah. So we went from 800 meters and then missed us by about 100 meters. And, you know, we were always dealing with things that were, you know, a little bit hairy. So, you know, that was just like, hey, God, that was a close one.
Yeah,
you know, carried on with it, you know. You know, that's a story to tell.
I tell you what, though, it's things that don't go to plan that really make the trip, right? I bet that was such a conversation point for you guys throughout the trip, referring back to it. And if you meet up in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you'll be talking about it. And it's type 2 fun, right? It's not, you don't enjoy it at the time. It's not type 1. You enjoy it later on.
It's definitely one of the things I talk about most from the row, because it grabs attention.
Yeah.
When we were on the row, it was just one of the things that happened.
Really?
It was memorable for sure, but lots of things that happened, but aren't necessarily such good stories. But we were always dealing with stuff, always. You know, then within the same 24 hours, we got a hole in the boat, right? And we're filling up the back cabin. If we don't fix that, we're going to be sinking. I checked one of the other cabinets. We're already full with 100 litres of water. I'm like, how long's that been full?
Yeah.
You know, and we start pumping it out. And we fixed it, but, you know, you just got to fix it, move on. The whole process was fix a problem, move on. You know, that was basically constantly like that all the way through.
Amazing. The adaptability and creativity to kind of resolve those situations quickly is just so key, isn't it?
Exactly, because you can train for so much, but there's, you know, all sorts of things that you just don't expect or don't train or don't have a scenario where you can train. You might be able to think it through, but when you're in it, what do you do? And you've got to make a decision quickly. I mean, like, you've got to think on the go. You've got to be creative about how to solve a solution. And if you don't have the answers, you've got to be creative about how do we get the answers, you know? Yeah. Is there someone we can get on the satellite phone to talk with? Is there, how do we get the answers to fix this? So it's all about being creative. And
so all those experiences you've had, especially that most recent one, which is probably your most epic adventure to date, right? What's up next for the guy in Dubai?
So,
what are you working on?
At the moment, I'm filming my show, Guy in Dubai, and that's going to take me through the winter. Okay. Just focusing on getting that done, and we're creating a documentary about the rowing. So focusing on, you know, work basically. I've had a nice bit of time off. Get these productions done, promote them, get them out there. In the back of my mind, and you know, this has started with the training. I've got 2 things that I'm working on. Maybe one is a slight stepping stone to the other one. In 2025, I want to climb the 4 tallest mountains in the world. Everest has been my dream since I was a kid. I can't die without doing Everest. I probably could have been all right not rowing the Pacific, but that was not such clear dream for me. Yeah. But climbing Everest is. But I realized that Everest is not really considered, you know, the challenging mountain anymore. It's K2, which is the second biggest, right? So I want to do that one as well, which is a big challenge and a dangerous challenge, and I need to be prepared for it. So I'm working on the fitness element of that now. In the meantime, another challenge has sort of come up, which might be a little sort of stepping stone challenge and help me with the fitness. A friend of mine was really keen to do it, and I did want to do it, but when you've got someone else who's really keen, it's like, all right, we can do this together then, you know. And it's 7 marathons, 7 days, 7 continents. So the real challenge is getting to 7 continents in 7 days, right? So start off in Antarctica, Cape Town, Perth, Istanbul, where you do Europe and Asia. Yeah. 2 different days. Yeah. Cartagena in Colombia for South America, and then end in Miami. And I'm interested in it. I remember being inspired and a little bit in awe of Eddie Izzard. Yeah. Do you remember when he did like 40 marathons in 40 days? I think that's what it was. And he's not a runner, he's a comedian. I was like, how do you do that? And you know, it was about pacing yourself, taking it slow, but mental toughness. And I know what mental toughness is like, because I went through that with rowing in the Pacific, where I was rowing 12 to 14 hours a day, every day for 39 days. So running 6 hours, 7 hours maybe, if I want to do a slow marathon for 7 days in a row, yeah, I know what that pain is like, and I know how to get through it. I know about how to prepare and really look after yourself so that you're not deteriorating, because it's not the first marathon, it's the 7th marathon that matters. It's how are your blisters and everything in the last one, because if you haven't looked after yourself, you're not going to be able to finish that one. You'll finish the first one, you'll finish the second one maybe, but like looking after yourself determines how you'll be able to keep going for the 7, which was the same in the rowing. How we administered our wounds, dealt with our blisters, looked after our skin, our hygiene. That's what determined how deteriorated we were in the last.
And how useful you are on the team.
Exactly.
It's the little things you do every day, right? If you don't do those, the team aren't going to get there.
Exactly. So the analogy we say is, we've always got to make sure our glass is half full. Our glass is full, so that we can pour some into others.
Yeah, right.
Because if you're half full, because you haven't looked after yourself, you can't help others. So it's a duty to look after yourself.
Yeah.
So I remember, when you row, if you get a kind of like a rogue wave, it hits the oars and it bashed into your shin, and it really hurts. And I'll be swearing all the time. But it would hit the same point on the shin all the time until that bump really grew and it split and it was bleeding. Now, I'm the kind of guy that just gets on with stuff, and I don't really, naturally, I'm not the kind of guy who looks after myself particularly well. But I was like, no, you have to get something on that wound, disinfect it, because that's going to get, you're not able to clean yourself properly. We don't have showers or anything. So really look after that. And I did, and it wasn't a problem. But looking after everything was how we maintained ourselves. And we all maintained ourselves pretty well. Same thing, same discipline needed for doing 7 marathons in 7 days.
Yeah.
It's a shorter time, but you can really deteriorate yourself from running, because it's a lot on your legs, a lot on your feet. So I thought the thing that interested me about it the most was this kind of cultural whirlwinds that you'll be in for 7 days.
Yeah.
First, you start off in Antarctica, a place I've never been and I really want to go to. No humans, freezing cold. The next day, you're in Cape Town, completely different climate, people around you everywhere, amazing scenery. Next thing, you're in Australia, dry climate, and then you're in, Istanbul.
How are you're flying from place to place every night, I guess?
It's a privately chartered business jet.
Wow, cool.
Right, so that's the only way you can do the timing.
Right.
But except for going to Australia, every other route is going back in time. So you're kind of saving time in terms of.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Keep doing that forever.
Yeah. So yeah, and then you go looking up.
I'll speak to you in 10 years, and you're still at the same.
I'm still going. Yeah. Is it still 2024? Yeah. So.
It's a lot of sponsorship though to do something like that, surely.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a challenge.
Exactly. So, and we had to do that for the rowing. So again, it's right. How do we create sponsorship?
Using those skills that you've learned doing that, and then throw it into something else, right?
Exactly. And I want to create a production about it.
Cool.
So this production will be a little bit different because I want to, with the rowing, we were in the most deserted place.
You haven't got a film team there watching you the whole time, and
Exactly. But this one, I'm interested in the destinations.
Yeah.
Showing where we are, the people.
Something iconic in each place that you can quickly go to and experience. And
we're going to need to eat.
Yeah.
We're going to have amazing food from all these places, and we're going to have to really stuff ourselves.
Awesome.
And
one big meal a day for 7 days in just the cuisine of that country.
Exactly.
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
And so that's kind of what I want to show. Is it's really, in my mind, it's a bit of a travel show. It was sort of centered around this human challenge.
Yeah.
I want to see if I can tell or give a taste of culture in that short space of time. I have camera guys there filming other things as well. Not just us.
Amazing.
And so that's something I've just started running, getting back into running, and I hate marathons. I've only done one.
Yeah.
I said I'd never do one again.
And yet here we are.
Yeah.
All sounds incredible, super inspiring. If anyone listening to this back at home wants to follow you and to watch your documentaries and hear more about this, where can they go?
So I'd love them to watch my show, because that's really a sort of long form storytelling. Here in the UAE or in the Middle East, you can watch it Sunday at 8 p.m. on Dubai One.
Okay.
If you're outside of the Middle East, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. And if you're traveling, you can pretty much watch it on most airlines on the in-flight entertainment.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And this show is a weekly or monthly or?
The one we're doing now is weekly.
A weekly show, brilliant.
Yeah, 23 minutes.
With the cultural insights of Dubai or?
Yeah, of the UAE,
of
really.
The UAE.
Yeah. It's gone from being an adventure show to really discovering a lot more about the UAE.
Yeah.
We did a great episode where I told 200,000 years of history of the UAE.
Wow.
Now, you might not know this, but the oldest archaeological findings of humans on the planet outside of Africa, which is where humans originated from, is here in the UAE, in Maliha, 200,000-year-old Paleolithic findings.
Wow.
But the history is not only in that era. There's also Neolithic and Bronze Age. So there was a lot going on here 7,000 years ago, especially in Ras Al Khaimah, in an area called Jofar. And the reason is in the mountains there was copper, and copper in the Bronze Age was mixed with tin to make bronze, which was the industrial revolution of the time.
Yeah.
Bronze was the tools, and civilization started in the Middle East, in Mesopotamia, which is sort of modern day Iraq. So it was all interconnected. So you've got a lot of history here, and I wanted to kind of debunk the myth, or debunk the notion that people say that, Dubai's a modern city, it has no culture, has no history. I've heard people say that. I'm like, nah, it's got a lot. I've been lucky enough to find it because I really get out there, but I need to show people. A lot of people don't know about the history.
Yeah. But
the culture, the local culture, it's kind of separated. You get among the Emiratis, and they love their culture. They have a whole load of hobbies and things that they love, that they do every day. But unfortunately there's a kind of divide between the locals and the expatriates that live here, and they don't mix very often. So we did some great episodes where we went dhow racing in these amazing dhow boats. I went to the Liwa festival where they love to race these big cars up dunes.
Amazing.
And it's Nissan patrols everywhere. We did Arabic traditional rowing, which was interesting.
So all of this is on the weekly shows that you're doing?
Yeah.
30 minutes long or?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
30 minutes, yeah.
I'll be checking that out.
And soon our travel show, Guy in the Sky, will be out, and our rowing documentaries.
So rowing documentary, when's it out?
So the long version will probably be out around the summertime, and we're doing a short 10-minute version as a bit of a teaser, which should be out next week.
Next week.
I'll be putting out my YouTube channel, so Paris Norris. So you can also follow me on my YouTube, Paris Norris, or on Instagram, which is also Paris Norris.
Amazing. Paris, super, super inspiring stories of adventure. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks.
I really hope you enjoyed today's Warrior Academy podcast episode. We're going to keep creating these episodes because I know that so many parents find them useful or get insights or get ideas about how to develop their child's character. But it all comes down to the 3 C's: confidence, conduct, and concentration. So if you want to get a deep insight into the levels of confidence your child has, the level of concentration they have, or the level of conduct they have, so that you can actually put a score next to it and then work towards increasing those scores like we do in the Warrior Academy, then I'd love to invite you to fill in the Breakthrough Area Assessment. It takes about 5 minutes of your time, and you will get a personalized PDF report on your child's 3 C's. To access the Breakthrough Area Assessment and find out your child's 3 C's score, all you need to do is go to www.breakthrougharea.com.